May meeting to order. This particular time, I see no one here in regards to the second item on our agenda, which is the public comment session. So we're going to move on to item number 3. We have all read, and I believe at this point in time, we have all signed the minutes. So to me, I guess that says we've reviewed it and we've approved it, but we need a motion and we need a second as a matter of formality.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Or I should say maybe sign the book. Item number 4. We've all had the opportunity to review the vouchers, and at this time, I will entertain any additions, comments, and/or corrections to them. Since I hear none, again, I will ask for a motion, and I will ask for a second for the approval of the vouchers.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by like sign? Let's move on to item number 5, which is the approval of the monthly reports for the month of March. And we'll turn it over to Mr. Fagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you look in front of you, you've got the revenue and expense summary for the year through March 2017. For the month of March, the electric department had a loss of right at $55,000, and the water department had a loss at right at $27,000. It was a mild month for the electric department, which caused that. The water department has been going through some extra line maintenance this year, which has really brought their things down. And there was a $20,000 purchase of chemicals this month that hit in that one month that influenced that bottom line quite a bit too. Year to date, the electric department is ahead $996,000, and the water department, unfortunately, is behind $92,000. But hopefully that will turn in the months to come. We just have to see.
It's going to be hot and we're going to be watering. That's true.
And that's all I have.
Dan's praying for you anyway.
Unless you have any specific questions, that's all I have.
Are there any questions from anyone? Comments? If not, then we will need a motion and second for the approval of the monthly reports for the month of March.
Second.
I have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed by like sign? Mr. Bowles, let's kick off the project status report, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The project status report for your electric department, we have 3 projects that we're tracking for you that are all included in your capital outlay. Our substation project, which is right on schedule. We've had folks witness the transformer test in Roanoke, Virginia, and the first unit passed with flying colors. We'll have some more folks going later this month for the second unit. Delivery is on schedule. Project's going great. Dutch Valley, our own force is out there. We're about 90% complete. All the wires in, just doing some of the final tie-in work and removal. And our job over the mountain in New River is also going very well and on target. It's about 70% complete. We expect all of these projects listed to be completed in the July time frame. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
To expand a little bit on why we think it's appropriate to have a visual, and we're now when we test these transformers, why we think it's a good idea and why we waste our time to do that.
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. There is no larger investment than that the utility company, the electric side, has than a power transformer. And we've got trained professionals that know how the transformer is supposed to behave, how it's supposed to react, and rather than just sitting back and getting a piece of paper that says we promise we tested it and everything was good, go and actually lay eyes and do and what's called witness the test. and we see the results for ourselves. We see the instruments and the way they hook them up, and so we verify and validate that the units are working properly as they're supposed to by ANSI standards. Manufacturer does the testing. They do it both at the facility, and they'll do it again once they set it on the pad, because we don't take ownership. We're not responsible for any of the transit, any of the offloading. It's not our transformer until they have tested it on the pad and all the tests meet the specifications. And then we get the invoice.
Thank you, Bernie.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, then I believe, if I remember right, I think we had hit 20 there. I was gonna say, I was thinking we had a couple of projects that closed on the electric side, Mr. Bowles.
I was kind of hoping for an attaboy or something from Charles on this.
Well, we still got one.
Yeah, I knew. I figured you would say that. We can't get them much closer than that, guys. With you do some math with a line crew and a day's work, and it's about $4,000. So I think we hit one within a day, and the other one a few days. So that's pretty darn good. Maybe Todd will do better, when it's his turn.
It's out of order there, Mr. Bowles. Yeah, that's pretty darn good, like you say, about, if I did my ciphering in my head right, about $3,053 over on the first, and looks like somewhere in the range of about $4,400 under on the second. So we'll say we offset and we're in the good.
You've got a bad calculator there, Mr. Chairman. I hate to
Oh,
point
it's
out.
14,000.
Yeah.
About 14,000. Sorry. Hey, listen, my bifocals.
I got to get the credit any way I can, because Charles is attacking on the
My
$3,000.
bifocals are not focaling, okay? That's my terminology, and I'm sticking to it. But anyway.
If you value us coming under our work orders, tell me so, because I can guarantee you, we'll never go over a work order, if that's what you value.
I wish.
How are you hitting it right on the button?
That's tough. That's a tough one to get.
That'll be you, Todd.
He's out of order, but anyway. No, I tell you, I'm glad to see those. Any other comments? All righty. Then if that's the case, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the painting of substations. And I am going to allow, once again, Mr. Bowles, he just loves the floor, being on stage here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is year 3 of a 4-year campaign to recoat all of the major expensive equipment that we have in our substations. It's imperative that we keep up with painting for a lot of reasons, the most important of which is you sure don't want $1 million transformer to rust through and seep oil out everywhere. So we're very diligent with this activity, and we sent bids out to 6 companies, and I can't even keep up with all the excuses. I know one of them told Todd that the man who was to deliver the bid had a heart attack the day of the bid opening. So, I mean, there's been some strange circumstances here, but be all that as it may, the low bidder, Public Utilities Maintenance, we're very familiar with them. They've done a lot of painting for us. Their bid is very, very much in line, and we recommend without any reservation that you award a construction contract to them for the painting that we've outlined for the $132,000.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any comments or questions?
I just had a question, Mr. Bowles, that's a huge difference, that's almost double, is that normal, is that?
It's not completely unusual when you're dealing with a work scope that is this broad, and it's all about the climate of the bidders at the time. And obviously,
They didn't
well,
want it.
now, we don't know what the guy with the heart attack would have bid. Maybe he would have been lower, or maybe he would have been very close to the 132, but obviously, the rest of them didn't need the work, didn't want the work, or if they got it, they wanted to make a fortune.
Yeah, that's it. What some will do is they want to bid because they want an opportunity next time, but they could afford it if they got this,
Yeah.
they'd be happy to get it.
I've
But
seen
public
it.
utilities wanted it.
Okay, I'm just curious, that was a big difference.
Am I the only one that finds it a bit odd that the day that the bids are to be open, that's when the guy has the heart attack, but in other words, he was just gonna, I guess, oh, well, let me just write something down here and send it right on down to Mr. Bowles.
I think he had some pretty extensive conversations with Todd, and I mean, the guy was serious. And we were surprised to not get the bid, and I asked Todd, call this rascal, cause I wanna hear what the excuse is. And I said, and God forbid something really strange has happened to him, you know. Well, lo and behold, Todd calls, goes to voicemail, he gets his boss, and his boss tells us about the gentleman having the heart attack, so I'm saying I believe him, you know.
Well, I promise you, they can come quick, I know, thank you. Okay, let's see, we need a motion and we need a second for the approval of the painting contract there.
I had the motion, Charlie had the second.
Sorry, I got derailed there, and
These guys will take, yeah, they'll get you off track.
that's right.
Todd,
Okay,
it's
then,
Todd.
yes, Todd's fault. Todd, quit your. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, by like sign? Vicky got me off when she asked about the differential.
I take the blame.
Sorry, Vicky, you're a
I'll
new
take it
one
off
on here. I
Todd
get to
this
pick on you. All right, let's move on to item number 8.
Mr.
And
Chairman.
that's, the presentation of Fizzler.
It
I think
is.
that's what y'all
It's like
pronounce
it's
that,
like a
isn't it?
candy stick, and
Yeah.
before Ernie gets started, because this is
Flizzer?
This is his Flizzer.
Yeah,
It's his
Flizzer.
baby. I just want to tell you, the board, which you already know how I feel, we are tremendously fortunate to have such talent working here, and CUB for our size of the utility and where we stack up within the valley. We have been first in so many areas, and this is another area that we are championing the way. And Todd has been such a great help to this company since the day he got here. We appreciate him, his talent, his expertise. He brings a unique skill set that has been a tremendous advantage. That's why in discussion, and Ernie and I wanted to have him here because he has been very much a part of this, and without his contribution, we wouldn't be able to present this today. But we appreciate Todd, and he has been recruited by bigger companies, and wisely he has
Come down here and be
committed to
insulted. Yeah.
Cub, and with that commitment, he has given his 100% and all of his resources and intellect and skills to make this a better company, and we have been great recipients of that. All that to say, then you look at Ernie, both as Ernie and Todd as professional engineers, what they've done, they have done written code that has not been written before. They have been in the instrumentation and extracted what they need. They have tested it on their own. We have validated all of that. And tomorrow at 10 o'clock, we've got a magazine going to come, and they want to talk to us about what we're doing here, because it's not been done anywhere else like we are doing it here. So all of that to say, has this been a help to our company? Has this been a help to our ratepayers? are we doing a good job, and how are we doing that? And this, we're now ready to, and we've hinted at what we're doing here, but it's a really big thing. And Ernie has been on this for many, many years. We started talking about this not long after our good friend Dennis passed away, and it was in the early 2000s that we got the vision for how we can move forward in order to do a better job in restoration, minimizing outages, and minimizing duration of those outages. So it is a foundation back in the early 2000s that we built on, and each step has taken us closer to where we are today, and this is an arrival time. So all of that, friend, to say thank you for all you have done, all you're doing, and the absolute impact that this has on our customers.
Well, thank you so much, Greg, for those kind words, and I would do disservice to try to replicate that with Todd, but I would also be remiss if I didn't echo the contribution that Todd has made, the assistance. He's been my right-hand man for years. He has been instrumental in seeing this through with me, and you have a very valuable employee with Todd. Even as the sun is setting on my career here with CUB, you have a very capable, an excellent engineer, and a great guy in Todd. So thank you for coming, and couldn't have done it without you.
Well, you didn't thank me. I mean, I said some good stuff. Oh, yeah, well, you were quiet. Yeah, that's better.
So we're going to talk about not Fizzler, but Flizzer. Flizzer. Greg has contaminated you with the Fizzler, I think.
Oh, I did that. I screwed that
Contaminated
up.
him then.
I screwed that up.
Fault location, isolation, sectionalizing, and restoration. I want to give you a little information, some of which is going to be news to you because I don't get to share this kind of stuff very often, so I am going to make the most of it. We have about 30,000 customers that we serve, a little over 1,500 miles of high voltage line, that doesn't count the service wires, 12 main substations that we get electricity. All of our electricity is generated by TVA. We have 47 active distribution circuits. Now, these are the main lines as you drive up and down the road, not the big steel towers, but the main lines driving up and down the highway that serve all of our customers collectively. There's 47, and we do serve in parts of 6 counties. I think it's prudent to spend a few minutes a SCADA system, the supervisory control and data acquisition. We're really big, us engineers, into acronyms. This is, in essence, the remote control capabilities of all of our substations. Distribution automation extends that capability beyond the fences of the substations, if you will, to the main arterial reclosing devices that are out here on the line. Volt control and optimization. I just came back, was invited to speak in Atlanta, and I have for the last 2 years. I've been invited on this, and it amazes me. We've had this a little over 10 years, and there's still very large utilities that have not deployed VAR control and optimization, and I'll give you in a minute some slides to help quantify the value of that. AMI, it's an acronym for Automated Metering Information. That is a replacement to the old mechanical meters. It replaces the meter reading that we had to do every day on electric meters. It gave us a platform of communication that links us to every customer that we have in a two-way fashion. We can communicate with that meter can communicate directly to our control center. That bridges us to outage management, OMS. Now, by virtue of this communications platform, we have an absolute knowledge of exactly which meters have power and which do not. That was unthought of around the year 2000. Demand response, we bring you that every month in the form of a report on that virtual power plant. As Greg has mentioned, we were, Little Clinton, the first TVA distributor of the 155 power distributors then to deploy successfully and demonstrate the benefits of demand response.
And shaving their
DVR,
peak.
yeah, through DVR, our dynamic voltage reduction. We are dispatchable, just like Norris Dam or Watts Bar nuclear plant, not of that magnitude, but we're in the stack that TVA calls to say, turn your virtual plant on. And we were the very first utility to ever even have that capability and do that for TVA Valley-wide. Every time they call, we also receive a monetary payment.
And it's not like all of our folks around us have got that, to do that. You know, very, very few across the valley are capable of doing that.
Direct load control, that's the smart switch program that we've talked about. That's the control of the water heaters and pool pumps. And Dan has been working with us since 2011, saved his department a lot of money on working with us on demand management when we need peak shaving, because we kick credits back to customers on that. Demand partnership, I still don't know of another utility that has that program. We developed that program and got it approved by TVA, and it's part of your virtual power plant and listed on your spreadsheet. The savings to it are in upwards of $500,000 at this point. Basic auto sectionalizing, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's more automation of devices out here on the line and code written and strategies deployed to limit the outage area to as small as feasible. And now we're at Flizzer. We're going to again talk about that. Before we get there, I want to show you some stuff quantitatively. Nationwide, as a standard, all utilities measure reliability in the form of these indices. Acronym, the dark navy blue, SAIDI, that is the System Average Interruption Duration Index. Now what that means, in short, we have 30,000 customers. If we were to turn them all off for 1 hour and they never lost power the rest of the year in a 12-month time, that would equal 1.0. What you need to see and appreciate is where we were and where we are in the trend line. And that, there's a lot of things that go into that. Our construction practices, our procedures, the materials we choose, the engineering of the locations of the poles, the wildlife protection, although we've not been 100% successful with an osprey lately, but we're working on that. And all those things, including automation, have driven that down to well below the national average.
I was going to ask, what is the national average?
It's about 140 minutes, but you have to keep in mind that involves a lot of customers in very dense areas and cities that have nothing like the service territory that we have out here, and the density of 20 customers a mile. So they get a lot of freebies in that. We don't get any freebies.
And there's a lot that don't track that. They don't have the capability to do that, nor those then that may have the capability, they choose not to do that because that becomes a quantitative number that they can that they're not really proud of.
Right.
So the 1.44, what is, explain
One
to me that that's a
1.44
measure. I know what it's measuring, but what is that a measurement
Okay, it
of?
reflects the average amount of time in a year, in a given 12-month period, that the average CUB customer is without service. And that's in terms of
Any period
hours.
for- Oh, for 1 hour.
1.44 hours.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Now, the pink line is same thing, only it's the frequency or the number of times that you experience.
One is
an outage.
duration, one is frequency.
Yes.
Okay.
Dark blue duration, pink frequency. The average customer sees an outage 1.23 times a year, okay? Now, an outage is anything where you lose power 5 minutes or longer. Blinks are good. You need to understand. Blinks are how the power system works. Blinks save the fuses. It saves us a trip. If we don't stop the flow of current, we can't switch it to another source. So blinking, although it can be a nuisance, it means the power system is healthy and working appropriately. System losses. This is huge. Remember, I told you that I just got back on this Volt VAR, and we implemented our Volt VAR optimization in '05. Well, now look, historically, when we track backwards, we're at about 5% losses system-wide. Since we deployed Volt VAR optimization, which is beyond the scope of this presentation, just see that the results indicate that we've got about a 30% reduction in our losses. Every percent of system losses is, in today's dollars, about $600,000, okay? So that is very, very significant. Couldn't have done any of that without the automation in place.
Is that this number we get each month on our
That is
report?
that, yes, sir,
Okay.
that number. So, in wrap up,
Once again, what are national averages for losses?
they're widely varied. It depends upon how the system is configured. You know, typically a co-op or a system like ours would have a higher loss rate because we have to transmit on longer lines. The longer the line, the more the loss, because it's all about heat. You know, put your hand on a light bulb, don't do it, but I mean, you know there's heat there, right? That's lost. The lines themselves, if they, as current passes through them, they warm up and they sag a little bit
For
lower.
TVA, it's about 5% in the valley, so 5% is a good number. Some are much higher than that. You know, the
I've seen co-ops with double-digit losses. Co-ops.
Now you can imagine, you know, I mean, if you rounded it out easy, if we did 80 million a year, for example, 1% of that is 800,000. You know, so you start putting that number, making that number work. You know, it's tremendous. Every percent is tremendous. That's why when we do our transformers and you see the calculation that we go through, part of that calculation is to address the losses associated with that over the life of that transformer, and that goes into our recommendation for what to buy, because the front end dollar doesn't always mean that through the life of that transformer we're going to get the most for our money. So losses are in all part of that, and how we address our substations and the upkeep of the substations, and we're changing oil out, and how we're doing these line extensions, because Ernie does thermal studies on those, and he talks about the heat. It makes a difference what the conductor size is, and we're almost 1,600 miles worth of line. Not talking about the service lines. I mean, I don't even know what that calculation would be, but we've got about 15 maybe customers per mile, and our friends right down the road have 58 customers per mile of line. And any way that you look at it, there are economies associated with having more on the line. You ought to do better if you could run a wire from that substation to the apartments over here and stop we would be making a lot of money, you know.
Absolutely. Did that answer your question? Okay. So, from those graphs, over the last 15 years, well, over the last 10 years, let's say at least, since we've had almost a 70% reduction in our SAIDI and almost a 60% reduction in the outage frequency for our typical customer, and almost a 30% reduction in system losses. Now, we're not going to make engineers out of you, and we're not going to try to make engineers out of you, but in order to fully appreciate where we are today, it behooves us to show you a little bit of where we came from, for you to get the sense of an appreciation for the journey that we've made. So we're going to give you a 50,000-foot overview. Now, this is the red with the boxes is showing you a typical utility circuit, with the B1 being a high voltage breaker. And again, you know, we've got 47 of those active in the system. MS, a manual switch. If you look real close, you can see a steel rod running up and down through here. The manual switch works. The lineman shows up at the bottom of the pole. He can crank it or move it from one side or the other, and that will either open or close this switch. So that is a manual switch. This is a reclosing device, a device that does have some intelligence. It senses fault, and it can make the lights blink to save fuses and whatnot. This represents how we operated up until about the year 2000, and it also pretty much shows where the majority of utilities are today, okay? There's no SCADA or any kind of automation involved in this scheme. If we went up a notch, we would basically take that same system as before and piggyback it and tie it together with what we call a tie line. And Gary, you might be the only board member that's been around long enough to recollect. There was a period of time we were really building a lot of these tie lines with a mechanical switch, so that if we did have a fault, we would have some flexibility here. And we'll show you more about that in a minute. Automated tie switch and limited scripting would be the next level up. So we take the system that we just showed you, and instead of a manual switch, we're going to install an automated switch right here, a switch that we can control back here at the office, or better yet, one that we can program through the computer to operate appropriately. And then the ultimate is the Flizzer system, and we'll show you that. This is a brand new pole. You still see the rod there, but it goes to a box at the bottom of the pole that is tied to communications, that ties back to the office and opens and closes on command. And if you want a closer look at this switch, you can go to Jim's parking lot, because it is on the east side of his drugstore out there, and I'm sure he'll be glad to give you a tour of that. So the typical system, as far as how it operates in the event of a fault, and by a fault, it could be a car wreck, it could be a tree that is fallen across the line, it could be a storm event, lightning, a loss of insulation, just a whole array of different scenarios. So let's just assume, for the sake of this discussion, that happens at this point. And again, this is the time frame of around pre-2000, and again, it emulates where many are today. First, we had no idea what happened until we started answering the phones. And we would listen to the customers and find out where they were located, and we would start piecing two and two together and figure out, try to figure out what circuit it was. In the meantime, we were calling the crew, who has 20 minutes to respond if it's after hours. Then they have to drive to the location. That can be as much as an hour on some of the remote places of our system. And then they have to do what we call patrol, beginning at the breaker, and they have to look all through here until they find the problem. Once they find the problem, they can drive to the nearest manual switch, and after communicating with the system operator, they can get that switch open. Green is open, red is closed. And then they got to drive to the substation because, again, this is pre-SCADA. They have to unlock the gates. They have to go find the breaker and, talk to the dispatcher again, and then they get to energize this one little piece. So we have one line section that is back, and there's not a darn thing we can do with these poor folks until we get this pole replaced or tree off the line or whatever the case may be. So let's go to the next system. This was our first graduation, somewhere around in the 04 time frame. We had SCADA installed, so now we can talk with and communicate with these breakers and these reclosers. We have tie lines constructed, and we have a switch right here. The same place as we did before. Well, at that moment, all the customers, once again, are without power, same as in the previous case.
All on that first breaker.
All the ones green right there flashing, they're without service. We still have to call the crew. They still get their 20 minutes to report, 30, 45 minutes, 60 minutes to find it. Then they have to patrol. Then, same deal. Get the switch open. The improvement starts now, though, because this little alien guy, that's a really cute icon that Todd found. That's our SCADA operator, and he then can remotely close this breaker and get these folks back on pretty darn quick. So that saved the truck roll to the station. Okay? All right, now we've got SCADA here, so we can go ahead and open this device, and now we've got this section isolated. All right, this is a mechanical switch, so we've got to drive to this location. Who knows, how long that's going to take. Get out of the truck, unlock this, get clearance, double check that this circuit right here can handle this additional load and that all the safety checks have been done. Then the operator will authorize them to close this switch, and that will energize up to this recloser. So we're down to just these folks right here that have to wait until we get the line repaired. But you can see we've made a significant gain right here at this level. The next gain we made is we said, we really need to automate this tie switch because we don't know at this point exactly what a FLISR deployment in full is going to look like, but we know to make it effective at all, we need remote control over this switch. So we started a campaign, and we went to all of these, what we call open points, and we replaced manual switches with automated switches. We also took this opportunity shortly thereafter, and we started delving a little bit into programming for some automation that we'll show you, and we affectionately refer to that as flip-flop. So let's take the fault again. Same situation. The whole circuit's out. Unlike rolling the truck right away, there is something that we can do, and in this particular case, we have got it programmed. The system, not the little alien, but you see this is automated, is now going to open this recloser because it knows the fault that it's not here. So let's go ahead and get this open. And let's go ahead and close this automated switch. And now, lo and behold, the folks on the end of the line that got the worst service are going to get back on first. What a trade that is. We still have got to get the truck out, and he still has to patrol this whole area because all we can tell him is we know that this breaker's out and the problem is between the two green boxes. He'll find the trouble, he'll open the switch, he'll communicate that back to the system operator, and our little friend will then close the breaker remotely, restoring all service except for what's in the troubled area. Now, here's where we are today. And by the way, I don't know of anybody that is at the level before this. And again, most are at the typical level, okay? We're at this level right here. We'll give you some facts on that in a minute, as far as statistics. But in this scenario, every device is intelligent. Every device can sense where the fault is. Every device can be communicated with. So let's put the fault for that instant. All these folks are out of power, just like all the other scenarios. But smart devices, this switch says, hey, well, the computer says, who saw that? This breaker says, I saw that because I've opened up. The switch says, yep, I saw it too. What do you want me to do? And this recloser says, I didn't see a thing. So our program looks for where that logic changes from I saw it to I didn't see it. And we know we got to get that open. Both of those points open and isolated, and we can restore the rest. So automatically, completely hands off. It's all programmed for this device to open, this switch to close, this device to open, this switch to close. So in a matter of under 2 minutes, we've got everybody back on but the one section right here, okay? Now, we're still going to have to roll the truck because Todd and I can't figure out a way to program the computer to set poles or to get trees off the line. But I think if I'm a lineman, I'm feeling pretty good about job security. So we still have to get them out there to repair the trouble. But I hope you can see what the gain was there. Now, what I'm showing you here is an actual circuit on our system. And it is one that we have got fully deployed with Flizzer. It is, as fate would have it, the most complicated circuit on the system, and it's the very one that Todd and I built the logic diagram, what we call the template, because we knew if we could figure out all the decision points that would have to be made with this, we could use that, copy and paste for all the other circuits. So the Lord then gave us a test on May the 1st with a tremendous windstorm, and some of you may have seen this on WBIR, the pictures and whatnot, but right there, a tree fell on this line on Clinton Highway. There's an actual picture of one of the poles that's broken. There were 4 broken poles, and of course at that instant, everybody on this circuit, 1,455 customers, were without service. Within 17 seconds, Flizzer had determined where the fault was, had opened this switch, hands off to our operators, and closed this breaker, and immediately then we were down to the 195 and the 144 without power. At the 53-second point, Flizzer opened this, closed this switch back. Now we're down to 195 customers without power. With such a tremendous amount of damage out there, that is just phenomenal. You do some math on that, 195 customers sustained outages versus the 1,455, that is an 87% reduction in sustained outages. Very impressive. You can't read this. I didn't want you to. Well, I didn't care if you did, but I knew you wouldn't want to. I'm only showing you this because I want you to see that there is nothing kindergarten about this. This is highly complex. This is our logic diagram. We have to go through every decision point. What if this? What if that? Well, if this is in place, let's do the safety checks. Let's make sure that the lines can handle the additional load. All that has to be done by the computer, programmed, and without human intervention. The right side of this diagram is where we're headed next. This is for a loss of a complete substation, and we're writing stuff now, logic-wise, to transfer the load if we were to lose power from TVA, for instance, or we were to have trouble inside the fence. We're writing code to transfer that load to other substations that are active. So we're not done. Still more to do. So what are some facts? We got 150 automated line segments. Our average customer count per segment is about 197. We have a little over 200 automated devices that we have installed, and we're planning to install 15 more. We're about 93% complete with the physical work in the field, 88% complete with all the communications platform, and 70% complete with our programming thanks to the template and thanks to copy and paste.
What is the computer? What type of computer you're using? Where is it? And what is the programming language?
The computer is a network type computer. It's Windows based. It's in our building right over here. It powers it has dual redundant type CPUs and disk. The language that we're using is the command language of our SCADA system, which it's like the SCADA system is the EKG of the system. It's out there with all of its sensors and feelers. So we take that information, we centralized it, and then we manipulated. This is my prop for what now is 80-something pages of code, which you're welcome to go through if you like, but this is our template that we used.
So Barrett, is what we have to go into to get it. That's the base of equipment that we go into to manipulate that code with. And that's what, when we even talk to them, and they don't know if anybody else doing it.
We plan to be 100% complete this fall with everything, but it's not like that we don't have stuff going right now, as evidenced by the Lord's tree that he brought down. So, here's some cool stuff. We got to wondering, is anybody else doing this? We didn't think so, but let's just see for sure. So we contacted our TVPPA membership. That represents the organization that interfaces with all 154 distributors of TVA power. They did a survey. They sent a survey to all the folks. The results of the survey is that we are the only member that has performed a custom design, deployment, and demonstration of Flizzr.
Is Flizzr a CUB acronym or is it an industry?
It is an industry acronym. Now I have to give you a disclaimer. In 2009, when the federal government was passing out money, stimulus money, Chattanooga Electric Power Board applied for grant monies to be the smart grid of the future. Their plan was to utilize an off-the-shelf vendor solution from a very reputable vendor, but a very expensive solution. They got $111 million. When I talked with them very recently, they have spent over $300 million, and they're still putting up switches as we speak. So their solution, very expensive. Their solution, very different from ours. Ours is very customized, and it was important to us to come up with a system that emulated what our operators would do manually. So just do what we're used to doing procedurally, safety-wise, in terms of what order of things, and customization was the only way to go. So other than EPB, it is believed that CUB is the only power utility distribution system in our region that is now operating system-wide Flizzr. I've talked to EPRI. Some of you may have heard of EPRI, the Electric Power Research Institute. They have one of their national offices is in Knoxville, Tennessee. I think they have 4 offices across the nation. I talked to the gentleman who interfaces with utilities about cutting-edge technology, and he told me that he was not aware of any other public power utility in the nation that has developed and deployed its own Flizzr technology, and he knows a lot of them. we talked to our folks at Surveillance Technology, that's our SCADA vendor, Charles. They have over 550 utility customers worldwide, and they tell us that we are the only utility that has utilized their command language in a FLISR-type deployment. So what are the real numbers, the total numbers, the aggregate numbers? Right at 500,000 sustained customer outages have been avoided, and a little over 750,000 of customer hours without power have been saved as a result of our smart grid deployment. Now we're going to talk about dollars for a second, because this is what makes Greg smile ear to ear. Smart grid. $5 million, we show you that every month. It keeps going up. It's the gift that keeps on giving. That's the virtual power plant. With the technology that we put in place over the years, it allowed us to take advantage of rate options that others could not take advantage of. Our rate consultant, Chris Mitchell, tells us that to date, CUB has saved $1.6 million on its wholesale rates due to the decisions that we have made.
That's since 2011.
That's since 2011, that's right. System losses, conservatively, I could make an argument that this number is much larger, but at the minimum, conservatively, $6.5 million since 2005. $7 million to the good on AMI right now. That is the automated metering information system, and not having to do the manual reads.
Is that totally deployed through?
Oh, yes. It's been totally deployed. Now, the only thing we're adding now are more remote callers so that Dudley and customer service folks can do remote turn-ons and turn-offs. And $3.3 million through TVA on the grants, not counting the payments they make to us every time they call. You add all that up, that's $23.4 million. And that is the end of our presentation. I can tell you that I could not be more proud of our department, of CUB, of Todd, and all my staff here, and very grateful for the trust that we've had all throughout the years. And I hope you can see, if I haven't demonstrated, if nothing else, through my actions and my voice, how grateful that I am. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Very impressive. Good presentation.
Just out of curiosity, when we had that windstorm in May, I think you said there was, by the time, within a minute, we were down to 194 customers without power. How long were they without power? I mean,
2 hours and 13 minutes later, after our men got there, we were able to do some manual switching. What this accomplishes is what we can do automatically. Generally, once we're on site, there are things we can do hands-on. We were able to do some manual switching. We were able to do some line work where we removed some jumpers just to get down to the 5 poles that were down, and we had them all back on within 2 hours and 13 minutes. Although it took us 8 hours to get the poles replaced. And even that was really good. I mean, the law enforcement worked great with us. They shut the whole highway down, allowed our folks to work. Great.
Yeah, I think it was an exercise in great cooperation from what I know about it. Other questions or comments? Ernie, I can only speak individually, but I cannot tell you how gratified I am to see, on behalf of our ratepayers, the absolutely excellent work that you and your staff have done, and about how wonderful this is for our customers.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Todd. Okay. Like I say, great stuff. Let's move on to item number 9, and Greg, you're going to talk to us about our presentation for our capital outlay projects for next year, and different methods of funding.
The, I thought it was important that we don't overwhelm you next month, because we're gonna be talking about the budget. And this way, it gives you a month to stew, because I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna be recommending that we do next month. And that way, you'll have an opportunity to digest some information, and you'll also have a month if you have questions related to that, so you don't have to process everything and then make a decision all at one time. I think that this will be a little bit easier, and essentially I'm going to talk about two things. The first is capital funding, and the next is this delivery charge, which we've been dealing with for quite some time. But assuming that this is going to work, which it does, our technology is working, I want it to give you a little bit of background. For some, it'll be a review. For some, it'll be new information that you can process. Capital projects, that funding is money that's earmarked or borrowed to buy, build, or construct utility plant that benefits not only our customers today, but benefits future customers. Capital projects, things that affect or longer than just 1 year. Operating, and you're familiar with that, operating expense, funding, it's money used to run and maintain what you bought with capital projects or capital funding. That deals with what we pay TVA for power, what we do to maintain the system, and what we do in terms of administrative expense. You'll see two really handsome young men. Right. We just had that. That was a selfie from yesterday.
Can we not afford any better pictures?
Right, that was it. At least it's in color. Capital funding cannot be used for operating expenses. You can't mingle those two. In other words, all grant monies and all proceeds from debt financing, which is bond issues and notes, must be used for capital projects. All operating expense and all costs associated with maintaining the system must come from money generated through rates and fees. Two separate things, two different budgets, capital budget and an operating budget. And we put them together, and that's what you're going to see next month. You're used to seeing this capital outlay budget. We've got, this is last year, or it's the current budget, operating capital outlay budget. $5,950,000 is what it was, and what we're currently under right now. Our operating budget, you're used to seeing that. This is when we forecast our proposed budget for fiscal year ending 2017 at $1,179,000. We mesh those together because we want to find out if we have sufficient cash in order to fund our operations, our debt service, and our proposed capital outlay. So you're used to seeing this forecasted funds available. We take all the cash that we have, we take all the reserves that we have, we put down all of our bond payments, principal payments for our debt that we now have, and then we add back what we forecast to be net income and what we forecast to be depreciation expense, since that's not a cash expense. And then we take away from that what we forecast our capital outlay to be. Now, the delta from that needs to be a positive, or we're going to have to do something different. Questions so far? Great. 3 ways to fund capital projects. Pay as you go, which is cash on hand. Grants with local, generally it has local contribution, and debt financing, and that's the issuance of bonds and notes. Pay as you go method is simply the exchange of one asset, cash, for another capital asset. Are you going to buy a line truck outright, or are you going to financing, you say, debt financing. If you're gonna buy a transformer, substation transformer at $1 million, you're gonna buy that outright with cash, or are you going to borrow money to pay for that? It is the appropriation and use of available cash to fund a capital improvement as opposed to incurring debt to cover the cost. Pay as you go. CUB our normal capital outlay runs around $6 million a year. If you look over the last 5 years, it's at $29.3 million. So right at $6 million a year. Pay as you go. CUB has funded all of these capital projects with available cash. So over the last 5 years and before that, I just didn't go past that. Over the last 5 years, we've been really running pay as you go. We have generated sufficient cash in order to meet these capital outlay projects, which include this smart grid, includes the line upgrades, includes substation upgrades. All grants for the electric utility generally are associated with economic development projects. Electric infrastructure grants are not normally given. Water and sewer grants, a lot easier, you know. Electric, except for Confluence. When Confluence was on the table, I cobbled together $13 million in grant money. If they would have pulled the trigger, I had 13 available that would have, because we would have had to build a separate substation just for them. But normally, grants are just not in the cards for the electric part of our utility. Debt financing is tax-exempt bonds that are the basic tool used by all electric municipal utilities to fund capital improvements that are necessary to provide needed facilities and services. That's the go-to method. Debt financing, you generally use tax-exempt bonds to do that. Debt financing is capital outlay notes or cons, 3, 7, 12, and 20-year level debt. Bond anticipation notes or bands are generally a minimum debt service over 20 years, 1/20. The case for debt financing. Number one, I wanted to list these. I love this word, intergenerational equity. Burdening the appropriate generation with the cost associated with the capital additions. So if you pay as you go for all of these capital projects, you essentially have a rate structure in place that could be disproportionately high, because you're going to have to extract. When we built I-75, that was over $5 million, you see, to put that in play. These upgrading to our substation Andersonville, the transformers that we're buying, there's $2 million associated with that. You say, I'm going to charge this generation sufficient rates that will provide me the revenue and cash that I need, that is going to benefit generations going down the road. And that becomes a disproportion in equity on how we do that. Debt financing also preserves our cash. In other words, we're going to take all of our cash and put it into capital projects, which means we don't have a reserve, which is part of the wall that we have been butting up against for quite some time. And I'll show you how that plays in with where we are in our debt. Rates are historically low if we went out and borrowed money for tax-exempt bonds. But they're expected to gradually rise over time. And with this current administration, it's our understanding on this great tax reform that they're talking about. The tax-exempt for municipal bonds is on the table for determination. When I went to Washington, I spoke with Senator Corker, I spoke with Senator Alexander, and I spoke with 3 congressmen, explaining them how important it was that retaining the tax-exempt status for municipal bonds were. It helps the cities, it helps the utilities, It would be a devastating blow locally, or everyone's locale, for that to be eliminated, but they tell me that that is absolutely on the table for tax reform. So, where we are in debt, how do we stack up? Where are we as we look at people that we generally compare ourselves with? For long-term debt, and these are utilities you're used to seeing all the time that we look at. You see Clinton down there at $6.3 million. That's our debt. That's where we are right now. Knoxville, I had to put that arrow up there because if I would have put 237 million, it would have skewed everybody. We all would have looked like we're on the same line. But Knoxville's at 237 million, and you see some of our local partners, Lenoir City, 60 million, Johnson City over 40 million, Appalachian over 40 million. So, I mean, there's a lot of debt out there, but I'm going to back up, Dudley. If I do that, I can do that. One of the things I look at is the ratio, assets to debt, because that's a standard financial thing to do. What is your debt ratio to electric plant? So when we look at that, we're running around 6%. Visually, we can see how disproportionately low we are, but it brings Knoxville back in to the scale, and you see our friends just north of us up over 40%, which is high. But although they look like us because we are spread out across 6 counties, they're spread out too. We don't have, for example, Oak Ridge at 58 customers per mile of line. They're running about 14 or 13 customers, per mile. So you would understand, their commitment to putting that facility out there as to why their debt ratio
And
is
this
so
is
high.
specific electric debt.
That's right, not
Okay.
water.
Okay.
Not
Or
water.
sewer. Okay.
Now, to make everything then on the same line, it's how much debt per customer, because that takes everybody's size, that takes location out of the mix. What does your debt look per customer? And again, Clinton is down there around $200, and some are up to $1,400 and $1,200, and a lot are over $1,000, but nobody's near us. And if we borrowed everything, which for next year, which I'm going to be asking for, there's still nobody near us. We're still will be way at the bottom of this chart. So when we complete this 2018 and we're putting the final touches on this, I expect it to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 million because of this transformer that we're going to buy. And again, we've already now got the first one at $1 million that we're already paying for, pay as you go. I'm going to be recommending that we engage the Tennessee Municipal Bond Fund, and these are two friends of the city and of CUB, and that's Bones Severs, Steve Queener. Bones is over that. Steve is the representative. I've been talking to Bones for an hour on the phone. I had Steve in for over an hour discussing this. I talked with Roger down at the city. I think that he's looking for maybe some capital projects next year that he'll be looking to Bones and Steve about, so we can all tie that thing together. But I'll be asking next month that the board authorize me to engage with them to assist us in debt financing for our proposed capital outlay. What I'll look for is to take that whole piece, which again will be about probably around $7 million, that we go ahead and we look to debt financing for that. That will increase our debt by $7 million, and again, where we put on in comparison will still be lower than anybody else around, and that'll do several things. It will relieve our expenses in terms of swapping cash for assets, so it will improve our available cash, which we need. I'll give you an example. Sevier County, here a few months ago, as you know, went through a terrible time. I talked to good friends there. They lost about 600 poles, 600 poles in the fire that they had. Now, that doesn't qualify for FEMA. So the utility, they calculate now they're spending over $5 million in restoration to put all that back, and that's all on the ratepayer. Man, the county's not helping them, the state's not helping them, the federal government's not helping them. The ratepayers have to pay for all that, so that's over $5 million. Our friends in Athens just had a tornado go through. I forget how many poles got knocked down there, but they're over $2 million. No FEMA money. You say it's all on the ratepayer. We need to have the reserves. We need to have reserves. We do have reserves, but we don't have sufficient reserves. This will help maintain and improve our cash position to give us additional reserves.
Should the board vote to do this in the direction you're thinking of going, we have a day's cash on our printout each month.
Yes, sir.
It happens to be 7, it's 3, it's 4, it's 5.
It'll improve.
In a year from now, what would you think that number would close? I mean, what's your goal to get that?
My goal,
Realistic.
realistic goal, and I think that's fair. If we had 25 days, I would feel really good.
I thought you
But
said
is
30
that-
before.
Well,
But is
really,
that-
I would like 40. You know,
But is that
but it's-
achievable?
Yes, it is achievable.
Really?
Yes, it is achievable. TVA would probably like us to have a minimum of 15. You know, but a lot are in this situation. It's
Sevier County just had another wind event.
I know, and
So they had 2 back-to-back with, 2 big wind events
if
within a.
they get
period of
enough
time.
statewide, because there was damage with that, it was more than just locally.
Okay.
Because I mean that's the key. You've got to have it. You got to have it regional.
More counties.
That's right, right. But no, that's my hope. There are utilities that have $30 and $40 million in reserves. I think that's too much because essentially what you do is the opposite. You are now charging your current customers too much to have that reserve, and your past customers too much when you have that much reserve. So you have to balance your rates. You have to balance your rates and reserves to make everything right. You need a fair reserve, and then you don't need any more. It's like churches that have millions of dollars reserve. I don't think it's a good thing.
Right.
Utilities that have after your contingency money, then your next thing is you need to reduce your rates.
And one day is a reflection of about how much money, roughly. I mean, that could probably vary because your bills vary.
I'd
But
have
there's-
to do a calculation, but if you take your annual operating cost and you divide that by 365.
365 and then multiply it back by 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
To get to that roughly amount, yeah.
so I don't have a calculator with me.
But that
Well, that's good. You're fine.
But I can tell you that, next month I'll tell you that.
that's going to be my recommendation. But you can stew on that for a month, and then if you get an epiphany about an idea, you can holler at me, and I'll be glad to go over it individually with you if you've got questions about this. It's all about I want to get this out so you don't have to make decisions on the fly. Yes, sir.
I was gonna say, since we will have, as part of that capital outlay budget, items of, I'm gonna call it varying, lifespan. Let's say.
Yes.
Will we vary our bond?
No. What I plan to do there,
But yeah,
we're
if
on
you
your
get where I'm going,
get
like,
your
if you're
debt
talking about
service.
transformers,
What I'm
on debt
going to do
service, it's 40-year
is I'm going to
transformers.
get when you authorize me to engage with Steve and Bones, we're gonna sit around the table and because then I'll come back and recommend to you what we think is the best value over the best duration and how we pay that off. It is, it's not so much what we're spending the capital outlay on, and the duration of those assets. It's more about, let's borrow the money while we think it is the optimal time because it qualifies with capital outlay payments. We can borrow this money for this particular purpose on this particular outlay
rate.
at this particular rate.
Yes.
Because I'm going to look at variable versus fixed, and I'm going to look to them to help us make good choices and the duration of how long that's going to be. I mean, right now we're in a race. What is it, 2020 or something? 2023 maybe? Yeah, that we're completely out of debt. Of course, water and sewer has no debt. And if I were showing you charts of these local utilities on water and sewer, they're up to 60 and 70 million. You know, I mean, it's just amazing. So next month, capital outlay, I'm looking to get authorization to move forward with Tennessee Municipal Bond Fund. We'll switch gears just a little bit, and I'm concerned about the time, but I want to give you this too because this is, again, something I'm going to be recommending next month. And now we've shifted down to supply and delivery charges. Utility bills have two components that you see. I'm assuming you're not talking about outdoor lights, or I'm just talking about electric bills here, not water and sewer. You have a supply or an energy charge, and you have a delivery charge. Supply charges are based on how much energy, or kWh, you consume. Your lights go on, your freezer goes on, your HVAC goes on. That meter calculates how much you use. That's supply. We know, and I could have put 9,000 of these things up, there has been a tremendous movement towards lower your bills. I mean, my friends, this is Home Depot down here. You go in there and they're telling you how to save on this. The lights, I mean, the fluorescent, we went by that from the incandescent, that fluorescent, we flew by that right to the LEDs. It's just amazing. Solar, you know, is a big deal, and you can see, you know, save on your bills. I mean, this picture of these solar panels on the roof, we've got a former board member. That solar panels on his roof. Every appliance you buy now is becoming, the energy efficiency is all about, everything's about energy efficiency. And every time you buy an appliance, what you use during the day drops down because you have a more efficient appliance. And I've got a picture of a Nest thermostat, which I have one at the house, and how that impacts your utility. Everything is about energy efficiency, about solar, about battery technology. Tesla's coming out. They've got a battery the size of a refrigerator you put out in your garage. So what your solar panels collect, they go into the battery, and then when you're not getting solar energy, you're going to get energy from this battery, so you can have 24/7. But after 3 days of rain, somebody's going to now want to turn on their electric switch, and it's going to come back to us, you know, which means lower energy, lower kWh. What we track monthly, and these are 4 different reports on each slide. You don't have to look at them, but I'm telling you, we're tracking everything, and we do this all the time to get trends, to see where we are, to see any abnormalities, any blips, any outliers, wholesale purchases in kWh. We tie that to the degree days and the maximum kW and peak, because we're trying to shave peak in what we do, on peak and off peak. Load factor, difference between load factor, we tie into weather with that. Losses as a percent of power on kWh, and long-term moving averages of percent losses. All of that we track it every day, and we do these reports monthly. net income and operating and maintenance expenses, revenue less power costs, and power costs as a percent of electric sales, total cash investments, prepayments and days of cash, residential averages in KWH, and GSA-1 in KWH. All of that data is telling us this. And I went back to 2011 for you. Despite a 1% growth in customers, CUB's KWH sales have declined by 11% in 2011 versus 2016. I had to go back to 2004 to find a year where we had lower total KWH sales. 2004. It's like this, and it's going like that, despite the industry, all the industry that we've had, and additions and things like that. Great, great. Thank heavens that we've had that. We are able to weather, and have been able to weather that, and part of that is part of that 23-point-some million that you saw, that we have been able to blunt the impact of our reduction in energy sales. We get a margin, and as of 2011, that margin became a variable amount, where we used to have pretty much locked in at 20%. Now, TVA has shifted the risk of this demand peaks to the utility, and that no longer is a guarantee. Look at where we are even by the month, and you could actually see where the savings in the virtual power plant, without that, we would have been in the negative, instead of in the positive. And other utilities, of course, they don't have that, but we have been able to blunt the impact on our revenue because of the things that we've been able to do. But it is inescapable that the revenue from energy is declining because of the efficiencies and the solar and the batteries, and the expectation is the trend line is continuing to go down. And that's not a bad thing. Energy efficiencies are good. I mean, we want that. We provide service. But how we do that, we need to be smart in how we do that. And as they continue to be impacted, as our KWH sales continue to be impacted by technology efficiencies and the undeniable proliferation of residential energy, solar energy, and the advancement in battery technology, solar energy is in its third generation. And now, I mean, I see little things that you can put up in your car window that'll do your phone, and they're talking, yeah, exactly. This is the ability to do that. It's all going to come to that. Not a bad thing, but it is a reality of this world, and how we respond to that is important. So, it's imperative, in my opinion, that this utility and all utilities recover the cost associated with delivering electricity to the meter, because that is not dependent on how much you use. It's cost recovery for what it takes to provide power out there. Now, even that, this delivery charge, which is socialized across the 30,000 customers that we have, there is an actual difference. It costs us more to serve someone in Briceville than it does for us to serve someone on Fowler Street, simply because of the proximity of where the substation is. You see, so there is some inequity of that, but TVA could also say that they charge us delivery charges the same over the 154 power distributors. And the reality of it is that to get to Clinton substation, it's easier to do that than to get to some substations that are further away than Bull Run and what we have up at Norris Dam. So there's they socialize that cost. We socialize it to our customers too. But the fact is, the average cost of what it takes to serve any one of our customers needs to be recovered. That delivery charge needs to be recovered, so we're not dependent on having an artificially high energy charge to subsidize those customers. If you've got a barn and you flip your switch on 4 nights a month, And what it costs for us to deliver electricity to that, because generally an extra span to get out to the barn, we are losing money. If we don't recover our costs, because we're not recovering that cost in energy, you see, because they're not using it. And then when they put a solar panel up there, and then they only use us on rainy days, it becomes less and less and less. We have got to be sure that we, in equity, charge people the appropriate amount for energy, and we don't charge some more to subsidize some that aren't paying their way for what it costs to deliver to their meter. Am I clear on that? Does it make any sense on that? So, all costs associated with getting electricity to your meter is part of the delivery charge, which includes those two little guys that you saw in front of the computer terminal, you know, all of the guys that when we went out and fixed that the poles on 25W, when you call in here and you talk to somebody, you know, all of that, including the what it costs in power for us to get out there, all of that's included in the delivery charge. Everything but capital projects. CUB engaged Chris Mitchell, and his team, CMMC. He has over 60 utilities as clients. I mean, so he is the premier electric utility consultant in the valley. We're lucky because he's right up the road here, but we were one of his first too, by the way. Following their recommendations, because we engaged them to do a study for us and to follow those recommendations, it was a process. And we've been in that process for a long time. To move a delivery charge up to what the target is, and you see on this slide, the target, and this now is a year old. So I suspect that that's moved, some not much, but I suspect it's moved some not down. I suspect it's moved up. But our target was $25.49. That's what he says it cost us to deliver energy to an electric meter on a residential home. Now, per month. If you look at July 2010, we were at $12.02. I mean, way behind that curve. And we took $3 incremental jumps. 1202 to 1502 to 1802 to 2102. So now we're in striking distance, the way I see it. And what I'm going to propose next month is that the board authorizes a $3 increase in the delivery charge, but it to become effective $1 a year. So in October 2017, this year, the delivery charge will move $1. In October of 2018, the delivery charge will increase by $1. And in October 2019, the delivery charge will increase by $1, and that puts us at $24. And then we'll have another study done, and we'll evaluate where we are at that time. This way, we're not beating ourselves every year with trying to escalate where we need to get to our target amount, and we'll do that in slower steps since we're in striking distance from that. And that way, it's also the minimum impact on our customers, which will essentially be $12 a year, moving towards what it actually costs to serve you at the meter. That's what I'm going to be proposing next month. We go ahead and approve a $3 charge, but the timing of that will spread over 3 years. And then you won't have to face a decision until we have a review at the end of 2019, and we'll have another study done, and we'll see what that target is there. Questions on that?
I do have a question. I just came on the board a little over a year ago, and I know last year when we voted, we did not vote to have the $3 increase. looking at this, that,
We did, that's what got you to 2021.
We did.
It was a long fight. That's,
Okay,
Greg is trying to.
okay, I'm
he's
sorry.
tired of doing this every year.
you're right,
And-
yes. So, but we also had the $3 increase in 2015,
Yes.
and a $3 increase, there's a span there. Was there not an increase between 2011?
There was not, and I'll tell you why.
11 and 15.
I'll tell you why. Because in April of 2011, and that's when all of these that's when we tie back to this rate. That's when TVA changed how it billed us wholesale.
Right.
And we lost that 20%, that margin, because there used to be what they call end-use rates. So you were only charged, and demand didn't have anything to do with it. Peak didn't have anything to do with it. And TVA only charged us for what we charged our customer.
Right.
And in that, there was a margin. Well, all of that changed in April of 2011. And because we were in this virtual power plant, until TVA figured out the winners and losers on how all this demand went, we were so successful in manipulating that demand on that transition wholesale rate that we were making a ton load of money.
So we rode that.
So we wrote it.
We
It's
were able to
essentially
insulate
what
the
we
customer
did.
against rate
I didn't
increases.
want to come, I didn't want to come to you when we were doing so well in terms of our cash, but TVA has wisely closed that window to where we are, although we do very well, average 80 or 90,000 a month generally on that, it's not in itself sufficient. So and as the KWH sales, as you can see, that continues to drop. And again, 1% or 2% in that, we already see is a tremendous amount of money. We're now back to, and we saw that we have got to address what it costs to serve, what is the delivery charge, and that's why we got back on that track. It is impacted, and the fact that we were paying $5 and $6 million a year in capital outlay since that 2011, we've spent $30 million on capital outlay on pay-as-you-go. So all of that saying, do we need to do anything? Are we in shape? Are we in such shape that that action, we have to do something now? Do we have a fire that we're $5 million in the hole? We would if we were that. And the answer is no. Can we get by without borrowing this money? Yes, we can. We can. Can we get by without a nickel more on a delivery charge? We can. But historically, what your staff has always done is try to present you with the opportunities to assure that going forward, we're in as good a shape as we are right now. We've always done that. Back in the 80s, and well, I guess the 90s, in the water department, I was in Dudley's slot at that time. I pushed so hard for rates in water and sewer to protect the water and sewer because we were doing capital projects that impacted the industry, but were on the backs of the ratepayers, or the water and sewer ratepayers, in order to provide the infrastructure for industry. And I said, we cannot do that. We cannot, to the point where the current mayor told the manager at the time to tell me to shut up, because I told him we were living on Visa. We were borrowing money to build these projects that we had no expectation of the revenue sufficient to return, so we had to address the rates. And we did. We raised those rates at every time I recommended it, and I only recommended it when we needed it. And because of that, we have the lowest rates because we charged the appropriate amount at the appropriate time, and we haven't had to raise those rates. So now we're completely out of debt because we're not putting anything out there for the industry on the backs of our ratepayers. we're completely out of debt, and we have the lowest of anybody anywhere. Because we applied the right rate at the right time. And that's what we're recommending now. We can do anything you want, but it's not a financial decision. It would be more of a political decision, since the facts clearly say that we're not applying a charge that recovers our cost for delivering power. And here is the one way to do it, although we have done all we can reasonably do, which is all I ever asked for. The board has done everything that I asked to do, because I can't say you can go from $12 to $25. You know, we would all be on a stake somewhere, off of Clinton Highway, saying this is the wrong way to run a utility. But incrementally, in steps, we've appropriately applied that, and I think that we can do that in smaller steps since we're in striking distance. And then, when we have a delivery charge that aligns with the cost of delivering that at the meter, then I believe we can address the energy charge. Because right now, the energy charge, in order to make everything work, realistically, we're charging more to some than we can justify, because we have to make up for what they're not paying for the delivery charge. Do you see? So some are winners and some are losers. When everyone's paying what it costs to deliver, then we can look at what our revenue return is and say, can we lower the rates? We'll be in a much better position to accurately do a rate that will cover the cost of debt and maintenance and administration. That charge will be used for that, because the delivery charge will be used for what it costs to get us out there. I'm saying, if we were charging the appropriate delivery charge today, we could charge less for the energy that we charge. That's in our current rate structure. You see, each percentage is about $300,000. If we have 30,000 customers, and that's $1 a month, do you see? That's $360,000 a year. So that's almost a step for every dollar. And what I want to do is I want to get to where we have a delivery charge that represents our actual cost. And when we do that, I want you all to be on the board when I recommend that we have a reduction in the energy rate, because we have sufficient return of revenue, because we represent the appropriate delivery charge at the meter. That's what I think is going to come.
My question, where I'm going with this is, okay, so when TVA did their restructuring in 2011, has the delivery charge on our end continued to rise since then?
Since 2011, it's right. $6. It rose $6, but
Gradually over those years,
Well-
not all at once.
well, no. We actually made that adjustment for the last 2 years, but what it cost in 2011, our study, I think then, was maybe $23 back at that time. We've always been way behind that ball, Penny.
And that's what I'm asking. Like, I see that we went up $6, but what has the actual delivery charge been for? Because we've always been behind, is what you're saying. So
The first time we did this, because it really wasn't on the radar quite the same way.
Okay.
Since our billing was so secure, weather was not impacted. Only that impacted was how much they used. Our margin was never impacted because of the way TVA charged a wholesale rate. It stayed within a 20%. We were always looking at about 20 cents off of every dollar. If we paid $1 in power cost, we would receive $1.20 from our customer. So then we lived off of that 20 cents. But that changed in 2011. When we went back, we identified this as an upcoming problem prior to that, and that's when we did our first study. Cost of use is really what that was. What does it cost you to use to provide power at any location? That's what TVA did for us when they did what are TVA's cost? What does it cost us to provide you power? And that's how they do their bill. So we looked at that cost of use, not only in this and everything, for transformer cost and things like that, billing for OLs, for everything. We wanted to, instead of having this broad, we're just going to charge you X and that X will go to everything. We wanted to make sure that some of the fees that we were charging were representative of what it cost. Dan and I worked through that when we looked at fees for meters, for connections, for attachments, and everything else. What are we fairly charging? And we did that in every aspect for everything that we did. And this is the last bastion because it was so disproportionately low and so difficult politically. Anytime you adjust anybody's bill, anything, we wanted to take it in steps. And how could we do that in steps? And in 2011, have we continued to be so successful in manipulating our demand charge, because that's almost $10 a kW, and Ernie can do thousands of those. We were so great in doing that. We took a breather on trying to get to this appropriate delivery charge. Because had we still been able to do that, we would have so much money now that we would then be looking at a rate reduction. We'd have somehow tried to work that. But that's not the case. We're living in the real world, and KWH usage is going down, and that pot continues to get smaller. So we really need to appropriately charge a fee that represents our actual cost to provide that service. We're still behind the wheel, but from from $12.02 up to 22 or 23, what our first study showed. I mean, now we're in striking distance. We're only $4 or $5 off the mark, and how do we get there? I think we can go $3 more over 3 years, and then we're certainly not going to be overcharging. And then
the target stays the same.
Because we think the target's going to go up. So in 3 years, if the target goes to $26, then we're only $2 off of that mark.
Right.
It's a whole lot easier.
Did we have a lot of pushback when we went up $3 from 15 to 16?
No, we did not from our customers at all. It's just that it's never an easy thing to do. The hero is the one that doesn't raise anything. Or reduces, then they really become, that's when you get a statue put out. But our customers, it's really not that much. It's not that much. I don't know, Dudley, you're in the customer service. I mean, I don't know, really.
I don't remember much.
I don't know if it was.
I was just thinking after $3 a month, one doesn't seem as bad.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm telling you, I don't know if there were 10 people that even noticed it. That one person in NAR, she notices everything.
I think one reason we haven't had any blowback is because service is so good.
Well,
I think if we'd been having outages.
I think that's true, and that service has, like I say, it's not like it just started this month. That's been a continuation. What we do get is a lot of positive pushback on how great the service is, and I hope you all get that too. I mean, we hear that all the time because if somebody has a relative living on another system, they're out a lot, and and we're just not, nor do we see to do that. I don't want to surprise you. So I wanted to give you this information to digest, and I am never at a loss of words, passionate about what we do, and fully invested in everything that I've said. So if you get back and you say, well, now I'm not sure about that, what did he mean by that? Please come in. We can set aside days, and I can go through all of this. And at the end of and I don't know that we've ever been convinced, because Chris did a great job in his presentation. Vicki, you missed that, but in his presentation, the data is there to support it. It's just the will to get there, and I think, like you say, it takes some of the sting out, and we're very comfortable. Part of that reason is because we're going to be $7 million in the good, coming off. If we're going to do everything that I'm recommending, we're going to have immediate, almost double our reserve to do that, because that $7 million, although it'll be for capital outlay, it's going to relieve us paying cash out. We're going to be in a much healthier position to do that. And we think we can do this, again, as much to get revenue, but also to match us up to where our target is. And then I'm telling you, folks, I mean, I'm 100% convinced, 100%, that when we reach our target, and we take a breath there for a little bit, I'll be recommending that we look at our rates and see if we can't then reduce the rates, which will be a first to say. All right, that's all I have. But always ready to answer questions.
Any other questions, or does everybody want to just kind of simmer on it for a month?
Well, I have two comments. Number one, it's unusual I've sat down here for this long and hadn't said anything, probably. That's three things. Two things. Number one, thanks for sharing it with us ahead of time, because I'm a thinker.
Yeah.
And I think of things just like everybody else, the craziest times, and I like to digest things and take emotions out of things. Every decision that I've made that's been an emotional decision usually comes back and bites you in the tail, whether that's personal or business or whatever. Number two is, and I'm sure you are, and you don't have to comment to this, but I'd just like to make this statement. As you're preparing next year's budget, I would like to ask that you all look, and if there's any way at all to save some cost and other things. And I don't know this, but let me give you for instance. I know as a small business owner a few years ago, very tied at Clinton Drugstore, healthcare, insurance companies, shenanigans and crooks and that they are. I had to go back and reevaluate things. And if I had been the businessman 15 years ago that I am today, I would be in a different situation. I mean, it's like you go back and you look at your dumpster contract and you say, wow, I'm going to renegotiate this thing and I'm going to get it $80 a month cheaper. Times 12, that's X number of dollars. And I'm going to go and I'm going to do something with my advertising. And I'm going to save here and I'm going to save there. And I liken it to this as far as replacing equipment. I know there's probably a protocol for how you go, and a lot of times replacing equipment has to do with maintenance, and because it gets to a point to where there's a point of no return. It's like you're sinking money in a sinking ship. But if there's any way at all as you prepare the budget to present to us next year, I just want to ask that do what you can, and you probably will already, but I just want to make myself feel better by saying that. If you can make that line truck last one more year, but again, it'd be foolish if it's a sinking ship to keep putting things in it. And I know you do that, but if you can turn the screw another half a notch in other ways, I would be grateful for that.
Yes, sir. I hear you.
And I think that's a fair request.
I do too.
Okay, enough said. Thank you.
I did get this for you.
Okay.
So
Oh, okay.
that's mine, and we'll get you
Oh, we-
Ernie's too.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I mean, know what I'm saying? That's my presentation.
Oh, okay.
Can we get a copy of that? Either online would be.
What I
okay.
could do two things. I can email it to you, and that way you'll have it in a PDF, and then I'll put it on the board book. We'll upload it onto this, so,
Email's good enough.
yeah. That sound
I'd
good?
like to have that, yes.
I can't guarantee you're gonna get the sound effects with Ernie's. The lightning coming, which I thought was pretty impressive.
I don't think the truck drives in PDF does it, Tola. No. You have to use PowerPoint for that.
That's it, friend.
Thank you.
Item number 10, other business.
No, sir.
That was mine.
How about CP?
The next meeting, second Thursday in June, I have 2 high school graduations out of state that week, so.
So if there's
I will
any
not-
way you could give me your proxy, that would really be great.
I might give it not to you.
Yeah.
Todd gets my prize.
That was good.
So, I apologize for that because it's always a fun meeting.
Well, I'm hoping that this,
Decreases some of
yeah,
the fun.
you know, so you're fully vested, and if you do have concerns during the month, holler at us.
Is that whole week a bad week?
Yeah, that week, that,
Can I add to that? My oldest son is graduating from West Point Summer Leadership Experience on Friday of that week. I will not be here on the 8th either.
Okay,
That's called
So with
reschedule.
that being said,
let's reschedule if we can. How about that?
That's my suggestion.
Because that's a,
that's what I would
you know,
suggest if we can.
that following Thursday would be good. I mean, that next week.
I can't remember. I'm gone the next week, but I can't remember when I come back.
all right.
I can go find out if you give me about 2 minutes.
Well, we can give you some dates. If you like, we can do that through email.
Oh, okay.
Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure.
It's fine by me.
And we'll look, and we'll have to change that and get news, get notification to the paper.
If we do that now, we're fine.
Oh, yeah.
We're fine.
But that's the big one. That's the big meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, I want the full board, I want the full board here. I mean, obviously something freak could happen, but I'm talking about from a planning standpoint, if we already know something isn't gonna work, then we do need to reschedule, so let's work on that.
But
CP?
graduate like once.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You don't want to miss
You
it.
know,
I got 2 of them.
West Point.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay. Ben?
I'm good.
I had a quick question, and in light of what we've discussed, this is so minute, but 2 people have asked me since we've met before, why is there an orange cone on top of an electric pole on the west end of
Have we
Cleveland?
ever heard this before?
It's the Osprey.
And it's ironic, you took Scott's place. Let's go.
I didn't know.
See, you know,
About this
we,
time
we
last
have
year.
got, well, I think we have finally deterred her. You know, the ospreys are tremendous raptors, and they don't bring twigs when they come, they bring trees. And they drop them on the lines, and they have been responsible for a handful of outages to one of these arterial feeders that we talked about on Flizzer. And the best deterrent that we've come up with, in speaking with TVA as well, is to put a traffic cone on top of the pole. Now, that being said, with a full disclaimer, we had one drop a tree on the traffic cone this year and caused an outage. So they're not foolproof, but no nests so far.
You are not making this up.
No, ma'am.
And we've
made
and
up.
we've discussed this before.
Okay, I didn't know.
It's amazing what they carry up there, and they're that big. We obviously don't want them on the line. So if they're building a nest, we'll go up and we'll destroy it. You know, if they and have eggs in it, or if there are little ones in there, then we call the state to see if there's, to help get them moved. The state gives us permission in an emergency. I mean, if the outage is them, you know, we'll do something. But if we can move them, we'll do that. But if we can take the nest down before, as they start to do it, and that way we're looking all the time. How many have we gone up? I mean, I bet you 4 or 5 times.
No, it's way more than that
We're
this
in
year.
buckets throwing these sticks off of
Daily. We've knocked them off at the close of business one day, and they're back the next morning.
Is it just that area down?
They like
Right
to be
beside
by
the
the
water.
river.
Yeah, down by the river.
Okay. I had just never seen it anywhere, and then people were asking, so, okay.
Tell them that we've had a traffic problem. Tell them it was
bird
Clinton.
traffic
Tell them
problem.
it's Clinton.
The problem this year was actually so, I don't know, overbearing that Rodney, our operating superintendent, had the federal guy down here. And he's told us that if it happens again, there can be a permit in order to remove the birds. So, I mean, there is an option there. I think we've got her shut down for this year. He did say that if you're diligent and you keep removing the trees that she's dropping, eventually she'll either A, nest somewhere else, or she'll give up. I think she's given up for this year, so we got our fingers crossed on that. But there are options
Okay.
that are legal.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no other questions, we are adjourned.